Welcome to Appointed Counsel, a podcast presented by Tennessee Court Talk for those involved in indigent representation. I'm Joe Byrd, lead attorney for the Indigent Services team of the Tennessee Administrative Office of the Courts. Episode 16, Non-Capital Criminal Claims. In this episode, we're going to cover non-capital criminal claims. But over the next couple of podcasts, we're going to talk to different members of the Indigent Services team who review the claims, not just to learn a little more about them, but we're also going to learn about some things that they see in the claims and maybe some ideas, tips, pointers that they might give to attorneys who are putting the claims in. Today, we're here with Gene Vestal. Gene, welcome to the podcast.
I appreciate that, Joe.
Gene, you have an interesting background. First of all, tell us what you do here at the AOC.
I am what is known as the first line auditor. For those sports fans listening in, I would be considered the Caitlin Clark, getting the rebound, assisting, throwing out the pass for the alley-oop, the fast break.
So you just called yourself the Caitlin Clark of the Indigent Services team.
Well, if the shoe fits, I hope I'll be remembered for that.
All right. Tell us a little more specifically about the kinds of claims that you handle.
I do the non-capital, as I said, first line audit claims.
And when you say non-capital, you're talking about criminal claims.
Right. And these are basically, I had started out as specifically in General Sessions Court, but have moved up now to covering all of the courts in the system.
Now, before we get a little bit more into your job, I think you have a fascinating background, Gene. I want you to tell our listeners a little bit about what you did before you came to the AOC. You've been with the AOC how long?
I am starting my 8th year here. I actually started as a temp and then moved up when there was a position in Indigent Services.
So tell us about your previous life, your career.
I was in the world of radio for a long time. I actually had my own mobile DJ business, did wedding receptions, and on the air doing DJ, news, and sports play-by-play.
Yeah, and you're a huge Preds fan, I understand.
Exactly.
Gene has always all the merch from for the Predators, so here in Nashville. So, Gene, let's talk about your job now. You said non-capital claims first line. So let me lay a little context. We always try to tell the attorneys we try to return claims in a turnaround of 30 days. But once they submit the claim, that's not the beginning of the 30 days. It doesn't start until the judge approves it, and it comes into your queue as a first-line auditor, correct?
Correct.
And so a lot of attorneys will ask me, well, why can't Gene just get right to my claim? Why does it have to sit in his queue for maybe 10 days or so before he even looks at it the first time? Can you tell the attorneys why it takes 10 days?
Well, we have quite a few to go over. Again, we do try our very best to get to them as much as possible. But again, the backload is quite heavy.
Right. I mean, we try to use a first come, first reviewed basis. So the oldest ones are what you try to look at first and try to get those done. But what it helps is if people understand that we only have really only about 4 first-line auditors, and the entire team reviews about 90, in fact, I think last year it was almost 97,000 claims. So that means you all are trying to get done about 250 claims a week, I think. Isn't that right?
Yes.
So that's a pretty formidable task for anybody to reach those targets, but it's necessary just in order for us to hit the 30-day turnaround. But now sometimes that can get slowed down if you have to return a claim, right?
Right.
So, okay, you're taking the first ones. I submit my claim. You're taking the first claims. Maybe there's, I don't know how many hundreds of claims before me, but you finally get to me. What would be some of the mistakes, some of the things that you have to return claims for?
The first one that comes to mind would be the case numbers. That's what normally I go to first of all. We have to match up the properties tab number with the number that's on the appointment order. And mainly that is what I'm returning them the most for, I would say.
Yeah, let me give a little insight on that because some attorneys might say, why do y'all care, right, if your properties tab case number matches? Well, we get audited by the comptroller's office, And the comptroller's office is responsible for making sure that we are looking at all of the monies that go out and that the claims are complying with Rule 13 and that we're properly reviewing and properly paying the claims. So if we don't match up those case numbers on the appointment orders with what the claim is, it would be a potential fraudulent situation. So those numbers have to be exact, right?
Exactly.
And I'm sure that's frustrating to the attorney to say, look, I just got one number off.
Right.
So when you return it, you're basically asking them to just fix it either on the properties tab or fix it in the appointment order.
Basically on the appointment order. Usually they're very good about returning that. And as you say, it's just such a minor note that once it's done, we get it out very quickly.
But at the same time, if we got audit finding that we were letting those go, it becomes problematic for the AOC. And it becomes problematic for everybody, in the long run. So we do that because of that. What's another reason you see claims getting returned from your standpoint?
Just missing information. Sometimes the attorney names aren't included in there. We definitely need those, of course, and the signature of the judges, which is extremely important.
Yeah, so when you're looking at an appointment order, it's not just the case number you're looking at the judge's signature has to be on there. Now, the dates, I know, remember we went to the Davidson County General Sessions Court and the trial court, and you remember that busy day, and I was trying to explain to the team how in the practice, you sometimes will just get appointed while you're standing in court, minding your own business.
Right.
And the appointment order is sometime an afterthought. So we prefer the appointment order to be entered nunc pro tunc, but if it's not, for the date, we don't have to be too tough on it as long as the court's saying that this attorney was appointed to this case, right?
Right.
So suppose I wasn't originally appointed to a case, but another attorney withdrew or was granted leave or permission to withdraw. What do I use for my appointment order then?
That is when an order of substitution would be issued.
If for some reason the court didn't get that order of substitution, I could always go back and get the court to go ahead and do the order of substitution and enter it back to the date when the substitution occurred, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Although that's not going to happen very often because most attorneys, if they're wise attorneys, will want to make sure their name is off of a case when they withdraw. So I'm sure you don't see that too often. You said information. It has to. I'm sure information has to do with more than the appointment orders, and I want to get to that. Some other information you see that's missing on claims. But one thing that I find when you all, this might help attorneys to understand. Sometimes when you all see a problem in a claim, you'll kick it up to the second review auditor, right?
Right.
And then sometimes they'll kick it up to me to review. And I try to explain to attorneys that, for us, we're trying to put these cases together from the mosaic of the documents we have and their entries in the claims. It's hard for us to see. One of the things that kind of, from my perspective, when you guys have questions and kick them up to me, is that when the attorneys don't put in the disposition of the case on the properties page, how it ended. So whether withdrawal or a plea was entered or a jury trial, do you send claims back when that's not in there? I don't think you do you?
No. There are times the second auditor may catch that.
Yeah.
And we go back if there's not like the stamped date and time that action took place.
Gene, another thing I notice on the properties tab is that there is disposition date / last activity. And some attorneys, particularly within the criminal claims, they get confused when they see last activity. They think they can put last activity in as the disposition date. And that's not the disposition date for a criminal case, right?
Correct, yes.
So what is the disposition date?
That would be looked at as the file date that's stamped.
On the judgment?
Judgment, right.
So I know some attorneys, they may not always go get the judgment, but it's simple to do. Go to the clerk's office, get it, show it to us. But now we don't always ask for that judgment, do we?
No.
I mean, we should be able to tell if they put the disposition, tried by jury, plea, bound over, whatever the case may be, on the properties tab, and then we can put it together from their activities. We generally won't ask for that final judgment. Can you think of a time when you do ask for the final judgment?
If the date is close to the final date.
Yeah, right,
then
close
we
to
would
the
get closer.
180th day.
Right.
Some attorneys haven't read closely through the newsletter and aren't aware of the policy that if that 180th day runs on a weekend or holiday, we bump it to the next business day. And that's a big pain in the neck for you guys because ACAP doesn't automatically calculate that. So whenever you see one that hits on the 180th day, you have to pull your calendar out, right?
Exactly, yes.
And as a general rule, you all don't worry about the final judgment until you start getting into that 160, 170 days. Then we have to have proof, right?
Exactly.
So,
and again, that's why we really work at getting them done as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and
30-day turnover.
It's kind of strange to me that if you didn't get paid on a case till it was resolved, and then to wait another almost 6 months to get paid, I never did that. Usually it was in the first 30 days after so I could get paid, or many times I never even filed a claim because it just wasn't worth the hassle doing it back in the days when I was doing those kind of claims. Any other reasons you can think of why you return claims?
Specifically in the notes, if we know automatically, I think for mileage, we do need specifics on where the travel took place, where they come from, and where they go to, and vice versa.
I think the rule is that they have to give us the point of departure and the point of destination.
Right.
And sometimes they'll put round trip. We don't. Do you return them if they give you the round trip all in one line?
If it's done in one line, that can pass.
Okay.
Right.
So now let me just ask you this so that the attorneys remember this. Is it just mileage you're talking about? But what about travel time? Do they get travel time too?
The travel time is mainly is in there, is included.
It's on the time entry section,
right.
and mileage is in the section below it, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then our policy that we've developed is that we will reimburse mileage, whether it's in county or out of county, as long as it's within 10 miles round trip.
Right.
So that should cover most everybody's travel. If it's less than 5 miles, it's de minimis.
Right.
But, if you're going 5 miles, put your mileage in. It's 70 cents a mile right now,
right.
I think. So, and then I'm sure the IRS will decide at the end of the year, close to the first year, like they did to us this last year, waited till the last week of December to tell us they were going to raise the rate. So, all right, anything else, Gene, that you see in some of the claims that you handle?
That's basically the main articles that we look for. Nothing else jumps out specifically right now.
Some attorneys still redact the orders when they put them in,
right.
which probably doesn't impact you as much as it does on the child welfare cases, because on the child welfare cases, they had to put the child's birth date, the child's name. Right. They would have to redact the birth dates out. They don't have to redact.
They do not. Again, it goes through much quicker now compared to before that. We are definitely being able to help by such changes.
Yeah, I think our return rate is definitely decreased because that was the primary reason we were returning was redaction. Now, they still do need to redact when it comes to personal identification information that might relate to invoices, receipts, those kinds of things. But the orders stay in-house with us and confidential. So if it's on the order, don't worry about it. If it's in another document, look it over, make sure your EIN numbers, Social Security numbers, those kinds of things are redacted. But otherwise, for the vast majority of claims, that doesn't even apply. So, well, Gene, if you were going to give a couple of tips to attorneys outside of the things that we've mentioned, or maybe you would even mention it to them, I wonder what that would be. Let me just give you a context of most attorneys. Most attorneys go to law school because they like practicing law. They like the law. They like especially trial attorneys, like whether it's examination, cross-examination, putting evidence into the record, and, they enjoy that. A lot of us enjoy legal research and writing. What we don't like, Gene, let me just tell you what we don't like, is we don't like the business of law, a lot of us. It's practice management. So sometimes things like taking time out of our schedules to enter our time and to put all this information in ACAP, it really is not what we enjoy. Okay, it's a necessary evil in the practice of law.
I'm sure.
So knowing that that's who you're talking to, who your hearers are, any bits of advice that you would give to attorneys as it relates to the claims that you handle?
I think just being specific in areas you might think need to be specific. As I said, mileage-wise, or if there may be a question that comes up on when you finish the case, that there may be some question, again, just spell it out so we can go exactly what happened.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, especially in those activities. If they give us a little more information, like, the jury ended in deadlock,
Right.
So it's a mistrial. Or if they'll give us some information about attorney withdrew, instead of just putting hearing. Most attorneys on most of the trials, jury trials, they'll put in day 1 jury trial, day 2 jury trial. But sometimes in general sessions, bound over, how it ended. Tell us in the activities line if they can describe it, particularly if there's something that it's going to look a little odd on our end and they can help us understand it. Their explanation sometimes can really keep us from having to return the claim. Now, when you return a claim and it gets pushed back, you still try to get those done as quickly as you can when they come back. They don't just fall to the bottom of the queue, right?
Exactly. As I said, most attorneys are very, very good about bringing them back as soon as possible.
But that brings us back to the number one thing that I think attorneys have to do. When ACAP was created, it was not created to generate an email saying, hey, you've got a return claim.
Right.
So the attorneys have to go into ACAP, and they should really do it every other day, in my opinion, and look under the return claim tab to make sure that we haven't returned a claim. As quickly as they can return it back to you, fixing it, then the quicker you can get it in the queue and maybe still keep it within 30 days.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, Gene, I really appreciate you taking the time. I should have you spin some discs for us here today. Gene is somebody who's done just a great job for us here and always pulling his load, and we appreciate you being here on the podcast today. Thanks for all your work.
My pleasure. Always being able to get back into business somehow is a treat.
Great. Thanks, Gene.
For more information, check out the Indigent Representation webpage at tncourts.gov.